Being here. The fall sitting of Ontario's provincial legislature is concluding, and the people of Ontario are no further ahead than they were when it began. During the Liberals' time in office, Ontario's economy has declined from being our nation's strongest and most productive to being its weakest. The impact is felt by families struggling to pay the bills because mom and dad can't find good work, and the most vulnerable who are facing service cuts. Tuesday's report by the Auditor General was scathing but not unexpected. Despite constant Liberal reassurances that everything is just swell in Ontario and we're safe in their hands, we're all feeling the pain. $2 billion were squandered on smart meters, which are failing to meet the government's stated goal to reduce power consumption. All they're doing is adding cost to the bills of ratepayers. But even that's a drop in the bucket compared to the extra $50 billion on electricity bills because of the Liberals' sneaky global adjustment tax. The global adjustment has increased by 1,200% since the Liberals added it to our hydro bills in 2006, with well over half of the $50 billion going to pay for unaffordable renewable energy contracts. To try and put this huge number into context, the Liberals' global adjustment will have cost the average household an extra $10,000 by next year over the last 10 years. And the Auditor General is just the latest person to find no benefit to taxpayers in the high-risk loan to the Mars real estate project. Yet instead of confronting the problems of their own mismanagement, the mounting debt and interest payments, inability to invest in necessary frontline services, and soaring energy bills, the Liberal government is focused on reassuring us that it wants to have conversations and that it's being responsible. While the pattern of behavior we've seen this session, clearly shows the hypocritical gap between words and reality. We keep hearing the Premier say she believes in transparency and accountability. But when this government is given the opportunity to back their rhetoric with action, the people of Ontario are always let down. People deserve answers and accountability, not hollow words. The government shut down the investigation into the alleged destruction of documents in the gas plant scandal. The government actually voted against the Ontario PC motion asking for testimony from two key players in the scandal, choosing to shut down the committee's work rather than be transparent and accountable. The government also prefers to keep the public in the dark over the mismanagement of their nearly empty Mars facility on prime real estate in downtown Toronto. Despite initially costing taxpayers more than $200 million, government claimed it was a good deal. But they still haven't provided an actual business case and analysis. We know now the government changed the rules for government loans so it could cut a special deal for Mars. Since 2011, this government has known that they are throwing more good money after bad on a failed Phase 2 Mars project, yet has not been open or transparent about it. We've still not seen a business plan, as I said, yet as of yesterday the government is pouring even more money into their mismanaged project, bringing the total to just over $400 million. The Premier talks about being accountable, but has turned a blind eye to the scathing indictment of her former health minister for the Orange Air ambulance fiasco. An all-party legislative committee unanimously agreed that the problems at Orange were primarily due to the lack of due diligence and oversight by the Ministry of Health. Despite mounting evidence of problems with Orange, including warnings from the Ontario Air Transport Alliance in May of 2011 and lawsuits from 2007 to 2011 on transport delays and poor patient care, Minister Matthews took no action. Her reward was to be promoted to Deputy Premier. There's no better example of the government trying to escape scrutiny than by their budget plan that can only be described as a fiscal fairy tale. Instead of a responsible plan, they claim the budget will be balanced with more spending, higher deficits, and bigger debt. They deny that ever-increasing debt interest payments have any impact on frontline services, yet the Ontario Nurses Association has identified 1,600 nursing positions already cut by this government. Community care access centres across the province are cutting back home care services by as much as 33%, and completely eliminating care for some patients. Despite flowery talk about having conversations to tackle society's problems, this government was stubbornly resistant to the Ontario PC call for a nonpartisan committee to examine how everyone can be made to feel safe from sexual harassment in the workplace. I'm pleased that today the Liberals have finally agreed to strike a select committee, even if it doesn't have equal party representation. The Liberals' government decision to pay over $180,000 to an assistant Crown attorney for his resignation instead of investigating harassment complaints made against him shows the problem is happening under the government's own watch. And when confronted with SAMS, the malfunctioning social assistance management system that they were implementing, the Liberals' first approach was to ignore the warnings. Next, they downplayed the mistakes in payments that said they were just a glitch, and now they refuse to have a legislative committee continue to seek answers and solutions. Too many empty promises and hollow words has been the trend, a trend that is truly condescending to the people of Ontario, who are all affected by the actions of this government. A government can only rise to the challenges faced by the people of Ontario if it truly respects them. This can only happen if a government is accountable and transparent. As Ontario's loyal opposition, the Ontario PC Party and Caucus will continue to hold this government to account and clear the smokescreens the Liberals so often put up. We're deeply disappointed in this government, but will continue to shine a light on their arrogance, ignorance, and neglect to force them to change their ways. It only took 3 ghosts to convince Scrooge to change his ways. I don't know how much more evidence the Liberals need to see that they are on the wrong track. Even on simple things that can make a difference for some people, the Liberals are being Scrooges. The Ontario Christmas Tree Association met with Liberals 2 years ago to ask for the first Saturday of December be designated as Christmas Tree Day in Ontario. A similar measure has boosted Christmas tree sales in the United States considerably and wouldn't cost Ontario taxpayers a dime. Yet the Liberals said, bah humbug, and for reasons that can only be partisan, refused to allow passage of my bill. Santa's going to need a locomotive train to haul all the coal that Liberal MPPs deserve in their stockings this year. Hopefully, as they reflect on the travesty of their decisions over the Christmas season, the Liberals will come back next year with a commitment to change their ways. Questions, comments?
Jim, you were. Why did the Tories support the legislation scrapping the G20 secret law? I'm sorry, I can't think of a good Christmassy segue after that.
You're probably getting tired, and you probably haven't had lunch.
Why was it important to get rid of this this antiquated law?
Well, I think we were somewhat use the word outraged. Some of our members were outraged. I mean, that people were kettled and treated unfairly, and I think any reasonable person looking even at that time and looking back at that time would say the right thing to do was be to side with the government and change a law that I forget how old it was, back to the war years. Yeah, and I think it was the reasonable, proper thing to do. It's a question of justice, eh?
Should Stephen Harper, show a little Christmas cheer, a little Christmas spirit to Kathleen Wynne and finally agree to meet with her?
We didn't rehearse that one. Just kidding. Listen, I think the Prime Minister has his reasons. I read through and see on the news that perhaps someday soon he will do that, and I would encourage him to do that. But Premier Wynne can't keep slamming them for all of her problems. I mean, she just ran a campaign where, at least in the first few weeks, all she did was blame the federal government, and that was going to be the theme of her campaign until we shot ourselves in the foot and we gave her another theme to talk about. The fact of the matter is, hopefully they will get along and hopefully it will happen, but the Premier has an unusual way of making friends by sending private letters, releasing those private letters, doing this through the media. She did have a chance to, and it was very good of her to call him when the shooting of Corporal Cirillo and the shooting in Montreal. Hopefully they will be able to get together.
Do you think a year is a reasonable amount of time to go for a meeting between the Prime Minister and the Premier of the largest province?
That's up to them. I really don't know.
Your party is facing a lot of serious issues as you sort of go into your leadership campaign. I mean, you face a lot of debt. There's not a lot of. You didn't have a very good election.
On my list might be easier for you.
You like? what would you like Santa to bring the PC party that might kind of help them get through this?
Well, I think we're getting our Christmas wishes. We have a united caucus, as you see in the House, day in and day out. We just had a Christmas party for party members last night, and it was fantastic. One of the best I've been to. I mean, considering we just lost an election. Morale's high. We have 5 fantastic leadership candidates out there who are all getting along and showing a very united front to our membership, and I understand membership sales are going very, very well. So I really, on the party front, given the reality of having lost an election not too long ago, couldn't be much happier.
Looking forward, where do you think the PC Party's focus will lie in the next session? How do you see things shaping up?
Well, I think we'll be revisiting a lot of what we saw this session. I mean, we're not going to let the Auditor General's report and the recommendations in there slide. I know it may be a little difficult a month and a half from now, refreshing people's memories, but we will do that. There's a lot in there. It's one of the worst reports I've seen in my many years here. And they're not going to allow Mr. Chiarelli and Mr. Duguid, to an extent, to continue to denigrate a parliamentary officer of this legislature, the Auditor General. We're going to continue to make sure that the government is held to account on all fronts, as we do day in and day out. And as you saw with their response to the Auditor General's report, rather than taking their medicine and swallowing hard and moving forward and promising to do a good job going forward and to correct the mistakes of the past and maybe even apologize along the way for some of these horrible scandals, they haven't done any of that. So I see no reason to let up. It's our job to hold the government to account, and we will continue to do that. And of course the Auditor General has just given us a whole pile of new ammunition. And I think the people of Ontario, I mean, once they figure out they're paying $1,000 a year on average, more than they should be, in the global adjustment in electricity rates, a tax that was not there until 2006, until the Liberals brought it in, people are going to start to get very angry out there. So I think we'll have a fair bit of help and support from the people of Ontario in the new year.
Are you concerned that there are 41% of children in the care of Children's Aid in the Toronto area that are black? We've long known that there's a high percentage of Native children in care in this province. The province doesn't keep statistics on this. The Toronto Children's Aid is one of the few that actually tracks this. And there's 8% of children in the city are black, and yet 41% of their caseload in care is black. Is that a concern for the...
Well, it is a concern. I think it's should be concern for all the parties, and the government should be ashamed. I mean, they've not met their poverty reduction targets, and now they've taken away the targets because they didn't meet the ones they set in the first place. The auditor gives us great insight for that we haven't seen for a while in terms of why we've been saying it for years, but the auditor now, in a very credible way, comes out and says because of interest payments, because of these scandals, she calls it crowding out. You're crowding out the ability and you will crowd out more, especially if interest rates go up, your ability to deliver frontline services. And we are seeing that with childcare, and we're seeing that with a number of our frontline services, and particularly on the poverty front to fight poverty. And you know, we're going to have another round of children's aid societies that are in deficit situation. I know mine, Simcoe County, is heading to a huge deficit, and I hear from other members. So the government has to set priorities, and children, regardless of color, should always be the priority of society. And it's sad, and I think the auditor's report backs us up. They're just not doing a good job on that front.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you. Same to you.